3 seconds was all it took for Linda Hayes to decide Marcus Reed didn't belong in the first-class lounge. His custom suit and quiet dignity meant nothing. All she saw was his skin. Security, she whispered, eyes narrowing with practiced suspicion. What she couldn't see was the empire Marcus had built from nothing, and the billions at his command. As security escorted him away, passengers averted their eyes, all except young Malik, who recognized the tech icon immediately. Marcus's face betrayed nothing as he made one call. Protocol Raven, begin observation mode. In those words, Regalis Airways' fate was sealed. They thought they were removing an unwelcome passenger. Instead, they had ignited a war against a man who had spent his life preparing for this moment, when discrimination would finally meet its match in power, strategy, and unstoppable justice. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The sleek black Bentley pulled up to the departures terminal of Washington National Airport with barely a sound. As the chauffeur stepped out to open the rear passenger door, Marcus Reed gathered his leather portfolio and adjusted his platinum cufflinks, a gift to himself when he closed his first billion-dollar deal. "Will you be needing any assistance with your luggage, Mr. Reed?" the chauffeur asked, his posture perfectly straight. Marcus shook his head. "Just the carry-on, James. I travel light these days." He stepped onto the curb, cutting an impressive figure in his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit that accentuated his athletic build. At 42, Marcus carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. "Very good, sir. Will you need pickup upon your return? I'll send the details once I land in San Francisco." Marcus took the handle of his sleek carry-on luggage. "And James, take the rest of the day off." "That's an order." The chauffeur smiled. "Thank you, sir." As Marcus entered the terminal, he felt the familiar shift in energy that always happened when he walked into spaces not historically designed for men who looked like him. Subtle double takes from travelers scrolling through their phones. A security guard who straightened up just a bit more when Marcus passed. A white woman who clutched her purse slightly tighter. Marcus noticed it all but kept his expression neutral. These moments were so common they had become white noise in the symphony of his life, annoying but predictable. He'd learned long ago that reacting only gave others power over his peace. The first-class check-in line was empty, and Marcus approached the counter where 2 gate agents were chatting. The younger woman, whose name tag read Sophie, smiled automatically. But the older agent, Linda Hayes, according to her badge, paused mid-sentence and gave Marcus a long, assessing look. "Good morning," Marcus said, sliding his ID and platinum frequent flyer card across the counter. "Regalis Airways to San Francisco, 11:30 departure." Linda took his documents with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And how are you today, sir?" The pause before "sir" was subtle but unmistakable. "I'm well, thank you." Marcus maintained eye contact, his voice measured and calm. Linda tapped at her keyboard with unnecessary force. "Business or pleasure today?" "Business, I'm sure." She glanced at his ID, then back at him, as if confirming the photo matched. "Reed." Marcus Reed." "That's correct." Linda leaned toward Sophie and whispered something. Sophie's eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. Marcus caught fragments. That startup guy and probably just lucked into some money. Marcus had built a multi-billion-dollar AI empire from nothing, but he'd grown accustomed to being diminished as that startup guy. "Your boarding pass, Mr. Reed," Linda said, handing him the document with barely concealed reluctance. "First-class passengers may proceed to the premium security lane and the first-class lounge. Boarding begins at 10:45. "Thank you." Marcus collected his documents, noting how Linda's eyes followed him as he walked away. The TSA security process was uneventful, though Marcus was randomly selected for additional screening, a statistically improbable event that happened nearly every time he flew. He submitted to the extra pat-down without comment, keeping his face neutral despite the indignity. 20 minutes later, Marcus approached the entrance to the Regalis Airways first-class lounge. A different agent stood at the podium, a young white man with blonde hair, who brightened when he saw Marcus approaching. "Good morning, sir. May I see your boarding pass and ID?" Marcus had just reached for his documents when Linda suddenly appeared behind the podium, slightly out of breath, as if she'd hurried to intercept him. "I'll handle this one, Ryan," she said, dismissing the younger agent with a curt nod. Ryan looked confused, but stepped aside. Marcus handed over his boarding pass and ID again. Linda examined them with exaggerated scrutiny, turning the boarding pass over as if searching for some flaw, some reason to deny him. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked quietly. "Just doing my job, sir." The way she emphasized "sir" made it sound like an insult. "This first-class ticket seems unusual." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Unusual how?" "Well, these are very expensive seats." Linda's eyes narrowed. "And we need to be sure that all passengers are in their proper place." Several travelers in the vicinity slowed their pace, sensing the tension. Marcus was acutely aware of the eyes on him, the silent judgment, the assumptions being made. "I assure you my ticket is valid," Marcus said, his voice still calm, but with a new edge of steel beneath it. Linda scanned his boarding pass, frowning at the computer screen. "This ticket, it's probably someone else's." She looked up at him. "Did you find this boarding pass, sir? Or maybe it was purchased for you by an employer." The implication hung in the air, heavy and offensive. A few feet away, an older white man in a golf shirt and khakis snorted derisively. "Maybe he's lost," the man said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Coach is that way." He pointed toward the main terminal. Linda didn't correct the man or defend her passenger. Instead, she seemed emboldened by the comment, standing straighter. "I'm going to need additional verification," she said. "This doesn't seem right." Marcus carefully extracted his wallet and removed a black American Express Centurion card, the credit card so exclusive. Most people had only heard rumors of its existence. "Will this help verify my identity?" he asked, his voice perfectly level. Linda's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Anyone could have that. I'm going to need to call security." She picked up a phone, turning her back to Marcus as she dialed. Marcus didn't protest. He'd been here before too many times to count. Fighting would only escalate the situation, turning him into the angry black man narrative that would surely follow. Instead, he stepped to the side and waited, his posture perfect, his expression unreadable. Within minutes, a security supervisor appeared, a tall, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair, moving with the economy of motion that suggested military training. His nameplate read, "Daniel Brooks." "What seems to be the problem here?" Brooks asked, his voice gruff but professional. "This gentleman is attempting to access the first-class lounge with what I believe may be fraudulent documentation," Linda said, emphasizing gentleman with the same disdainful tone she'd used for sir. Daniel Brooks turned to Marcus, his eyes registering a brief flash of recognition before his professional mask returned. "Sir, may I see your ID and boarding pass?" Marcus handed them over without comment. Brooks examined them carefully, then looked at Linda. "Miss Hayes, everything appears to be in order," he said. "Mr. Reed's documentation is valid." Linda's face tightened. "But he doesn't," she caught herself. "I mean, it seemed suspicious." The system flagged nothing," Brooks interrupted firmly. "I see no alerts on this passenger. I want him removed from the lounge area," Linda insisted. "Just to be safe. We can't be too careful these days." Brooks hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but bound by protocol. "Sir, one apologize, but would you mind coming with me while we sort this out?" "It's just procedure." Marcus nodded at once. "Of course." As Daniel began to escort him away, Marcus noticed a young black man in a Regalis Airways intern uniform watching the scene with wide, horrified eyes. The young man's name tag read Malik, and he was frantically typing something on his phone. Marcus followed Daniel Brooks toward the security office, maintaining his dignity with every step. Once they were out of earshot of the lounge, he removed his phone from his pocket and made a call. "This is Reed," he said quietly. "Protocol Raven, full spectrum engagement. Begin observation mode." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket just as Daniel Brooks opened the door to the security office. "Mr. Reed." "Aye, it's all right, Mr. Brooks," Marcus said. "I understand you're doing your job." Brooks looked pained. "For what it's worth, sir, I recognize who you are. This shouldn't be happening." Marcus merely nodded. He'd been preparing for moments like this his entire life. This wasn't the first time, and sadly, it wouldn't be the last. But unlike the previous incidents, This time would have consequences. Meanwhile, in the terminal, young Malik Carter was texting frantically to his friend in the IT department. Dude, they just messed with Marcus Reed. The Marcus Reed. The man basically invented half the systems running this airport. We are so screwed. The IT break room was typically quiet at this hour, but Derek Wells nearly spit out his coffee when he read Malik's text. He immediately called his friend. Are you serious right now? Derek demanded. Dead serious. Malik hissed into his phone, ducking behind a column to avoid being seen by his supervisor. Linda Hayes and security just escorted him away like he was some kind of criminal, all because he was trying to enter the first-class lounge. Do you realize who that man is? Derek's voice rose in panic. His AI systems run half the infrastructure in every major airport in America. Reed dynamic security protocols are used by the Pentagon. For God's sake, I know exactly who he is, Malik replied. My senior project at Howard was based on his early algorithms. He's a legend, man, Derek finished, and they just treated him like he stole something. As Malik and Derek processed the gravity of what they'd witnessed, their conversation echoed the story of a man whose name had become synonymous with innovation and excellence, a story that began in much humbler circumstances. 28 years earlier, 8-year-old Marcus sat alone on the steps of Greenwood Foster Home, clutching a worn notebook filled with numbers and diagrams beyond the comprehension of most adults. His social worker, Miss Patterson, sat beside him, her hand gentle on his shoulder. Your aunt's not coming today, Marcus, she said softly. I'm so sorry. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. His aunt, his only living relative after his parents' death in a car accident 2 years prior, had made promises before. She rarely kept them. It's okay, he said, continuing to scribble equations in his notebook. I need to finish this anyway. Miss Patterson peered at his work. What are you working on? It's a system, he explained, his small face serious beyond his years. To predict patterns. If you can predict patterns, you can prepare for what happens next. Miss Patterson's heart broke a little. Of course, this brilliant child, who had lost everything at 6 years old, would be obsessed with predicting the future, with preventing the next disaster before it struck. You're a special kid, Marcus, she said. Someday, everyone's going to know it. By 14, Marcus had moved through 4 foster homes, enduring racial bullying, jealousy over his intelligence, and the constant struggle of being the only black child in predominantly white schools and neighborhoods. He'd learned to keep his head down, to observe, to speak only when necessary. At Marshall High School, math teacher Mr. Winters recognized something extraordinary in the quiet teenager who completed calculus problems while his classmates struggled with basic algebra. You're wasting your time here, Mr. Winters told him after class one day. You need to be challenged. Marcus shrugged. I challenged myself with what? Hesitantly, Marcus pulled out his latest notebook, he'd filled dozens by now, and showed Mr. Winters the code he'd been developing. Mr. Winters stared at the pages, his expression shifting from curiosity to astonishment. This is graduate-level work. What exactly are you building? A predictive model for financial markets, Marcus said quietly. It's just a hobby. A hobby, Mr.? Winters looked at him in disbelief. Marcus, this is extraordinary. For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. By 17, Marcus was working 3 jobs, mornings at a coffee shop before school, evenings at the library, and weekends washing dishes at a local restaurant. Every penny went toward the refurbished computer parts he'd assembled in his tiny bedroom at his latest foster home. You're going to burn yourself out, kid, his foster father, Jim, warned him one night, finding Marcus still awake at 3:00 a.m., coding by the glow of his monitor. I'm fine, Marcus insisted, not looking away from the screen. What's so important that it can't wait until morning? Marcus hesitated. Jim had been decent to him, not warm, not a father figure, but not cruel either. I'm finishing my app. The scholarship applications for Miss UIT are due next week, and I need this to work. Jim squinted at the screen. What's it do? It analyzes historical weather patterns and crop yields to predict food shortages before they happen, Marcus explained. It could give aid organizations months of advanced warning. Jim stared at him for a long moment. You're something else, you know that? He shook his head in wonder. Get some sleep, Marcus. Even brilliant minds need rest. For once, Marcus took advice. He got 3 hours of sleep before his morning shift. When he returned home that afternoon, Jim was waiting with an envelope. "This came for you." Express mail. Marcus opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter offering him a full scholarship to Monsieur MIT. His foster parents threw him a small party that weekend, the first celebration anyone had ever held in his honor. It should have been the beginning of a perfect success story. It wasn't. 2 years later, 19-year-old Marcus sat in a sterile conference room in downtown Boston, facing 3 white men in expensive suits who smiled too much. "Your algorithm is impressive, Mr. Reed," said Bradley Winston, the silver-haired venture capitalist at the center. "Rough around the edges, but we see potential." "Thank you," Marcus replied, maintaining eye contact despite his discomfort. He'd spent 2 years refining his predictive food shortage system into something that could save thousands of lives. "We're prepared to offer you $50,000 for the IP," said another man, Andrew Phillips, according to the business card on the table. Marcus frowned. "The projected value is in the millions." Winston laughed, as if Marcus had told a charming joke. "That's very optimistic. Look, we're taking all the risk here. You're a student with an unproven concept. A concept I built and tested myself," Marcus countered. "It works." "The World Food Program has already expressed interest." "Such passion," Winston said condescendingly. "But you need to understand how business works. We have the connections, the infrastructure." "You want to strip the humanitarian application and sell it to hedge funds," Marcus interrupted, finally understanding. "That's not what it's for." The third man, Robert Davies, sighed impatiently. "Mr. Reed, let's be practical. You're a sophomore from nowhere, with no family connections, no wealth behind you. This offer is generous." Marcus stood up. "Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Don't be foolish," Winston warned. "You turn this down, we'll develop something similar in-house. You'll get nothing. I'll take my chances." Marcus collected his prototype and left. 6 months later, Winston's firm launched a derivative of Marcus's system, having reverse-engineered aspects of it from the demonstration. They made millions. Marcus received nothing, not even credit. It was the first betrayal, but not the last. It taught him a crucial lesson. In the world of business, power was everything, and he had none yet. While Malik continued his frantic text exchange with Derek, similar conversations were happening across the airport as word spread rapidly among the staff. The Marcus Reed was being detained in the security office. Daniel Brooks was visibly uncomfortable as he went through the motions of checking Marcus's documentation again. "I apologize for the inconvenience. Mr. Reed," he said formally. "This appears to be a misunderstanding." Marcus remained calm. "Is it, though?" Brooks' eyes met his briefly before looking away. "Sir, a misunderstanding implies unintentional error," Marcus said. This felt quite intentional. Brooks didn't respond immediately. After 20 years in airport security following his military service, he'd seen patterns emerge. He'd witnessed the random selections that weren't random at all. He'd observed the extra scrutiny applied to certain passengers, particularly successful-looking black men who dared to occupy first-class spaces. "I can't comment on that, sir," he finally said. "You don't need to," Marcus replied. "Your silence speaks volumes." Brooks cleared his throat. "You're free to go, Mr. Reed. I'll personally escort you back to the lounge." "That won't be necessary. I believe my flight is boarding soon anyway." As Marcus left the security office, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. "Mr. Reed, this is Malik Carter, Regalis intern. What happened to you was wrong. Many of us here respect you greatly." Marcus paused, considering. Then he typed back, "Stay observant. Truth reveals itself to the patient." Outside the terminal, in a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, a woman watched the airport entrance with laser focus. Sarah Adekunle had been head of global security for Reed Dynamics for 5 years, ever since Marcus had personally recruited her away from her senior position at the CIA. At 45, with her close-cropped hair and perpetually alert eyes, Sarah carried herself with the quiet assurance of someone who had seen the worst of humanity and knew how to counter it. Her phone rang. "Adekunle," she answered crisply. "It's me," came Marcus's voice. "Protocol Raven, is active. Understood. Assets in place. Moving into position now. I'm boarding shortly. Sarah nodded, though Marcus couldn't see her. Initial intel on Regalis is concerning. Heavy ties to offshore accounts, particularly in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Their CEO, Richard Grayson, plays golf with half the Senate Transportation Committee. Vulnerabilities numerous. Sarah replied, bringing up a secured tablet. Their cybersecurity is outdated. Internal culture is toxic. 18 sexual harassment settlements in the last 5 years, all buried, and their flight safety record is maintained through aggressive legal suppression of incidents. Perfect, Marcus said, his voice revealing nothing of what he was thinking. They're rotten from the inside. What's the play here? Sarah asked, dropping formality as she often did when they were strategizing. There was a pause before Marcus answered. They humiliated me because they thought I was powerless, because they saw my skin and made assumptions. This isn't about revenge, Sarah. No, it's about accountability. It's about consequences. These systems persist because they're never challenged by someone with the resources to fight back. Sarah smiled grimly. And you have resources more than they can imagine. Marcus confirmed. Prepare full spectrum engagement. I want every skeleton in every Regalis closet exposed. And Linda Hayes? Sarah asked. Her too. No one is collateral damage in this. Everyone who participates in these systems makes a choice. Meanwhile, across town at the Regalis Airways corporate headquarters, CEO Richard Grayson was enjoying a whiskey in his office after returning from a round of golf with Senator Thomas Green, chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. Great news, Martin, he told his CFO, Martin Reynolds. The proposed safety regulations will be indefinitely delayed for further study. Martin raised his eyebrows. That saves us what? 30 million in upgrades? At least, Richard confirmed, swirling his drink. Tom's a good friend. He understands how business works. The intercom on his desk buzzed. Mr. Grayson, there's a situation developing at National Airport involving a high-profile passenger. PR thinks you should be briefed. Richard sighed dramatically. Can't PR handle anything themselves these days? Fine, put them through. A nervous voice came on the line. Sir, a passenger named Marcus Reed was apparently denied access to our first-class lounge despite having valid documentation. It's already generating social media attention. Richard frowned. Marcus Reed. Why do I know that name? He's the founder and CEO of Reed Dynamics, the AI firm, the PR representative explained. Oh, right, the tech guy. African-American fellow? Yes, sir. Richard waved dismissively, though no one could see him. Standard response, then. Regalis Airways is committed to diversity and inclusion, blah, blah, blah. Isolated incident, not reflective of our values. You know the drill. Sir, I think this might require more attention. Mr. Reed is extremely influential. Look, Richard interrupted, just blame it on the employee and move on. We've handled these situations before. No one has the attention span for outrage anymore. It'll be forgotten by tomorrow. Yes, sir, the PR rep said dubiously. After hanging up, Richard turned to Martin. You see what I have to deal with? Everyone panics over nothing these days. Martin looked less certain. Reed Dynamics. Aren't they the ones who developed the new air traffic control AI system? Probably. Richard shrugged. They're all the same, these tech companies. Too much money, too little real-world experience. Don't worry about it. Back at the airport, Sophie approached Linda in the staff break room, her expression troubled. Linda, what happened with that passenger was wrong, she said quietly. Linda looked up from her coffee, eyes narrowing. Excuse me, that man had every right to be in the lounge. His documentation was valid. You know it was. I was following protocol, Linda said defensively. He seemed suspicious. How? Sophie challenged. Because he was black. He was better dressed than half the passengers in first class. Linda's face hardened. Men like that always play the victim, always looking for special treatment. He wasn't asking for special treatment, Sophie argued. He was asking for the same treatment anyone else would get. You're too young to understand. Linda dismissed her. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know trouble when I see it. Sophie stared at her in disbelief. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You see trouble when there isn't any. She turned to leave, then paused. You know who that was, right? Marcus Reed. His company is worth billions. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Linda's face. The name means nothing to me. Maybe it should, Sophie replied. Because I guarantee it means something to our executives. As Marcus's flight prepared for boarding, he received another message from Sarah, Phase 1 ready. On your command. Marcus looked out the window at the Regalis Airways plane waiting on the tarmac, its corporate logo gleaming in the morning sun. Then he typed back a simple response begin. Then we expose them piece by piece. As Marcus Reed's flight touched down in San Francisco, his phone buzzed with notifications. The incident at Washington National had already made its way online, with shaky cell phone footage showing his interaction with Linda Hayes and his subsequent escort away from the first-class lounge. This is what happens when you fly while black, read one trending post, accompanied by the video. Another showed a side-by-side comparison of Linda Hayes's smiling professional headshot next to a still image of her confronting Marcus. By the time he stepped into his waiting car, major news outlets had picked up the story. Breaking news today, announced a CNN anchor, her expression grave. Tech billionaire and AI pioneer Marcus Reed was allegedly denied access to a first-class airport lounge despite having valid documentation. Regalis Airways is facing accusations of racial profiling following the incident, which was captured on video by multiple witnesses. Marcus watched the coverage impassively as his driver navigated through San Francisco traffic. His phone rang. Sarah Adakunal. The news cycle has it, she informed him. Social media responses divided, but trending in your favor. Regalis's PR team is scrambling. And our other initiatives? Proceeding as planned. First, digital insertion complete. We're monitoring systems now. Marcus nodded, though Sarah couldn't see him. Good. Keep me updated. Within hours, Regalis Airways released an official statement plastered across their social media accounts and sent to major news outlets. Regalis Airways is deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels of our operation. The incident involving Mr. Reed appears to be an isolated case of a rogue employee, not following our established protocols. We are investigating the matter fully and will take appropriate action. We extend our sincere apologies to Mr. Reed and all our valued customers. At Regalis headquarters, Richard Grayson scanned the statement with disinterest before tossing the tablet aside. There, problem solved, he declared to his crisis management team assembled in his office. Now, can we please focus on actual business? Teresa Williams, Regalis's chief communications officer, pressed her lips together in concern. Sir, one don't think this will be sufficient. The optics are extremely bad, and Mr. Reed is highly influential in tech circles. Richard rolled his eyes. It's a PR hiccup, Teresa, not the end of the world. Blame the employee, make vague promises about doing better, and move on. That's how these things work. Sir, Teresa tried again. I think we should reach out to Mr. Reed directly, offer a personal apology, perhaps some form of, for what? Richard interrupted, his voice rising. For a momentary inconvenience? He still made his flight, didn't he? Besides, this isn't the first time we've dealt with passengers who claim discrimination. They usually settle quietly once legal dangles the right amount in front of them. Teresa exchanged concerned glances with Martin Reynolds, the CFO, who had remained silent throughout the meeting. Martin cleared his throat. Perhaps we should at least consider. Meeting adjourned, Richard announced, standing abruptly. I have a charity dinner to attend. Handle this however you need to, but keep it contained and inexpensive. As the executives filed out, Teresa hung back. Martin, I'm worried. This feels different. Martin nodded slightly. I know, but you know Richard. Once his mind is made up. He trailed off, glancing at his phone as it vibrated with an incoming call. I have to take this. It's security at Washington National Airport. Linda Hayes strutted through the employee lounge, basking in attention from colleagues who had seen the news. I was just doing my job, she told a group of fellow gate agents, protecting the integrity of our premium spaces. You never know these days. Sophie stood nearby, arms crossed. That's not what happened, and you know it. Linda's smile faltered. Excuse me. You targeted him specifically. You left your post to intercept him at the lounge. The room fell silent as other employees watched the confrontation unfold. Linda's face hardened. You need to be careful, Sophie. Making false accusations against a senior colleague could impact your future here. Before Sophie could respond, their supervisor entered the break room. "Linda, I need to see you in my office immediately." Linda's smug expression vanished. "What's this about, Jeff?" "Now, Linda." His tone left no room for argument. As Linda followed him out, her phone pinged with a notification. It was from Regalis HR. All employee social media accounts are now subject to review as part of our updated social media policy. Please refrain from commenting on recent events involving Regalis Airways. Meanwhile, travelers across the country were experiencing unexplained glitches in the Regalis Airways booking system. Flights disappeared from the scheduling database, only to reappear hours later. Premium customers found their reservations downgraded to economy without explanation. Payment systems declined valid credit cards, while occasionally processing the same transaction multiple times. At Regalis, its headquarters in Dallas, systems administrators worked frantically to identify the source of the disruptions. "It's like the system is fighting itself," explained the lead engineer to his increasingly frustrated director. "We patch one issue, and 3 more appear. I've never seen anything like it." "Could it be a hack?" asked the director. "Maybe, but there's no obvious point of entry. Our security protocols are all registering as intact." The engineer pushed back from his desk in frustration. "The weird thing is, it's almost like the disruptions are targeted." "What do you mean?" "The glitches seem to be affecting our most profitable routes and highest value customers. It's too specific to be random." Back in San Francisco, Marcus sat in his hotel suite, watching real-time data flow across multiple screens. Sarah's voice came through the secure video connection. "Operation Mirror is active," she reported. "Our people have identified multiple vulnerabilities in Regalis's executive communications. We're gathering intelligence on Grayson and his inner circle, and our digital insertion, performing as designed, subtle enough to seem like system errors, but impactful enough to hurt their bottom line." Marcus nodded approvingly. "What about our human assets?" "The airport employee, Malik Carter, has been surprisingly helpful. He's provided access to internal communications channels, and we've identified other potential allies within Regalis who seem unhappy with the current leadership." "Good. What did you find on Linda Hayes?" Sarah's expression turned grimmer. "She's a piece of work. Multiple passenger complaints over the years, all buried by management. She has a pattern of targeting passengers of color, particularly in premium cabins. HR has a file on her, but they've taken no substantive action." "And Daniel Brooks?" "Former Air Force, 20 years in airport security. By all accounts, a decent man in a difficult position, ethical, but constrained by the system." Marcus considered this. "Reach out to him quietly. I want to know where he stands." As this conversation was taking place, Malik was working his shift at the airport, feeling a mix of anxiety and purpose. His phone buzzed with a text from Derek in it. "Something weird is happening in our systems. Boss is panicking." "Does this have anything to do with what happened yesterday?" Malik checked to make sure no one was watching before replying, "Maybe. Keep me posted." Several terminals away, Daniel Brooks was reviewing security camera footage from the previous day, focusing on Marcus's interaction with Linda. He rewound and replayed the scene several times, his frown deepening. It was worse than he remembered Linda's body language. Her clear disdain, the unnecessary escalation. His office phone rang. "Brooks," he answered. "Mr. Brooks," came a smooth, professional female voice. "My name is Sarah Adekunle, head of global security for Reed Dynamics. Do you have a moment to speak privately?" Daniel stiffened. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important right now. What matters is that we have a mutual acquaintance in Marcus Reed." Daniel glanced around his empty office, then lowered his voice. "What is this about, Miss Adekunle?" "It's about justice, Mr. Brooks." And choices. "Mr. Reed was impressed by your professionalism yesterday, despite the difficult position you were placed in." "I was just doing my job." "Yes, but the question is, whose job were you really doing? Following protocol or enabling discrimination?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's unfair." "I followed procedure, perhaps, but you knew it was wrong. I can hear it in your voice even now." After a long silence, Daniel spoke again. "What does Mr. Reed want from me?" "Nothing you're not willing to give. Just truth, when the time comes." After the call ended, Daniel sat motionless, staring at the security footage still frozen on his screen. In his 20 years at the airport, he'd seen countless incidents like this one moments where procedure became a shield for prejudice. He'd always followed the rules, stayed in his lane. But for what? At a downtown San Francisco restaurant, Marcus met with a distinguished older woman whose silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. Evelyn Banks had been one of the first black female CEOs in the tech industry, breaking barriers decades before Marcus entered the scene. "I saw the news," she said as they settled at their private table. "Brings back memories." Marcus nodded. "Some things never change, but some things do," Evelyn countered, studying him. 20 years ago, you would have had no recourse. Now, you have resources, influence, power. "I do," Marcus agreed, "and I intend to use them." Evelyn sipped her wine thoughtfully. "I taught you patience for a reason, Marcus. The long game always wins. I'm not being impulsive, aren't you?" "This feels personal." "It is personal," Marcus acknowledged, "but it's also bigger than me." Regalis Airways has systematically enabled discrimination while pretending to value diversity. They're rotten to the core, financially, ethically, operationally. And you're going to be what? Judge, jury, and executioner? Marcus's expression remained calm. "No, I'm just going to create transparency. What happens after that is up to the market, the regulators, and the public." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. "You've thought this through. You taught me well." She nodded slowly. "Just remember what else I taught you. True power isn't about destruction. It's about transformation." "I remember," Marcus assured her. "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability." As their dinner continued, across the country, the Regalis Airways systems continued to deteriorate. Customers flooded social media with complaints about cancelled flights, lost reservations, and multiple credit card charges. The hashtag Regalis Chaos began trending alongside hashtag FlyWhileBlack. In the IT war room at Regalis headquarters, the director slammed his fist on the table. "How is this possible? We've patched every vulnerability." "Sir," a junior analyst spoke up hesitantly, "I think I might know what's happening." All eyes turned to her. "There's a pattern to the disruptions. They started right after the incident with Marcus Reed." "Coincidence?" the director dismissed. "Maybe not," the analyst persisted. "Reed Dynamics created the backbone of our booking and scheduling systems 3 years ago. What if? What if there's a backdoor we never knew about?" A tense silence filled the room. "That's impossible," the director finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Our security team would have found it, unless it was designed not to be found until activated." At that moment, Sarah Adekunle was briefing her team of cybersecurity experts from a secure location. "Phase 2 begins now," she instructed. "Focus on their internal communications. I want every email, every text message, every internal memo related to discriminatory practices or regulatory violations." One of her analysts looked up from his screen. "We've already uncovered something interesting. Richard Grayson has a separate email server for communications. He wants kept off the official system." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Can you access it?" "Already done." "It's enlightening." Meanwhile, Malik was finishing his shift when he overheard a conversation between two managers. "They're looking for a scapegoat," one said in a hushed voice. "Boards putting pressure on Richard." "Who are they targeting?" "Security Supervisor Brooks. They're saying he should have de-escalated with Reed instead of removing him." Malik's heart raced as he pretended to organize pamphlets nearby, straining to hear more. "That's bull," the second manager replied. "Brooks was just following protocol. Linda's the one who created the whole mess. Doesn't matter. They need someone with authority to take the fall. Linda's too easy a target. They'd be admitting direct discrimination. Better to frame it as a security overreaction." Malik waited until they left before pulling out his phone to text. "Derek, they're planning to scapegoat Daniel Brooks for the Reed incident. Can you confirm?" Minutes later, Derek replied, "Confirmed. Just saw the draft announcement. They're suspending him pending investigation." That night, as the media frenzy around Regalis Airways intensified, a simple message appeared simultaneously on the screens of every Regalis employee's computer. "This is only the beginning." The message vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Regalis employees stunned and executives panicked. In the company's Atlanta headquarters, Richard Grayson paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it costs," he barked. "I want this contained now. Get me Julian Pierce." Julian Pierce was a name whispered in corporate circles the fixer brought in when normal PR strategies failed. His specialty was crisis management through intimidation, leveraging connections across media, politics, and occasionally the darker corners of information gathering. 3 hours later, Julian strode into Richard's office without knocking. A lean, immaculately dressed man with cold eyes and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. "This is worse than you described," were his first words, tossing a tablet onto Richard's desk. "Your stock is down 12% since opening. Social media is a bloodbath. And that message on your employees' computers? You've been hacked, Richard." "Thoroughly." Richard slumped into his chair. "Can you fix it?" "I can manage it," Julian corrected. "But it will require decisive action. No half measures. Whatever it takes." Julian nodded once. "I'll need complete authority over your communications team, access to all personnel files, and a dedicated security detail." "You have it. Just stop the bleeding. First thing, we identify and neutralize internal threats. Anyone who might be sympathetic to Reed or tempted to leak information." "You think we have a mole?" Julian's smile was cold. "Organizations always do, especially during a crisis." The next morning, Malik arrived at work to find security personnel stationed throughout the terminal. As he approached the employee entrance, a guard stepped forward. "Malik Carter?" Malik froze. "Yes. Come with me, please." He was led to a small conference room where Julian Pierce waited, reviewing a file. "Mr. Carter," Julian said without looking up, "please sit." Malik remained standing. "What is this about?" Julian finally raised his eyes. "Your communications with Derek Wells in it, your interest in the Marcus Reed incident, your access to sensitive employee discussions." He closed the file. "You have 2 options. Option 1. You're fired immediately for violating company confidentiality policies, blacklisted from the industry, and potentially face legal action for corporate espionage." Malik's hands began to shake. "And option 2? You tell me everything you know about who's been contacting you regarding Marcus Reed, and you continue your work here now, reporting directly to me." In a similar conference room across the terminal, Daniel Brooks faced the same ultimatum from another of Julian's team. Unlike Malik, Daniel had decades of experience keeping his expression neutral under pressure. "I've done nothing wrong," he stated evenly. "No?" The woman across from him, Lisa Chen, according to her temporary badge, slid a printout toward him. "Your access card was used to review security footage of the Reed incident, multiple times after hours. You received a call from Sarah Adekunle, Reed's head of security, and your personnel file shows you filed 3 complaints about discriminatory security protocols in the past 2 years." Daniel remained silent. "You're a liability, Mr. Brooks," Lisa continued, "but you could be an asset instead. Tell us what Reed's people are planning." "I don't know anything about Mr. Reed's plans," Daniel replied truthfully. "Then you're of no use to us." Across town, in a sleek co-working space, Margaret Lane, Chief Operating Officer of Regalis Airways, met with Sarah Adekunle under the pretense of a personal day. "This is extremely irregular," Margaret said, her voice low despite the privacy of their meeting pod. "These are irregular times," Sarah replied calmly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Margaret straightened her jacket, a nervous habit from her early career days. At 52, she had navigated the treacherous waters of corporate America as one of the few women in aviation leadership. She had compromised often, looked the other way sometimes, but she had her limits. "I assume this is about Marcus Reed," she said. "It's about Regalis Airways," Sarah corrected. "And the rot, at its core. You know what I'm talking about." Margaret's expression remained carefully neutral. "I'm the coup of this company, Miss Adekunle. Why would I help you damage it? Because you're better than it," Sarah answered simply. "Because you've spent a decade trying to change Regalis from within, only to be blocked by Richard Grayson at every turn. Because you've reported safety violations that were buried, discrimination complaints that were ignored, and financial irregularities that magically disappeared from audits." Margaret's eyes widened slightly. "How could you possibly know about?" "We have our sources," Sarah interrupted. "The question is, when the storm hits, and it will hit, which side of history do you want to be on?" Margaret was silent for a long moment. What exactly are you asking of me? Nothing active. Just be prepared. When evidence of Grayson's misconduct becomes public, people will look to you for leadership. Be ready to provide it. As Sarah left their meeting, her secure phone buzzed with an update from her team. Banking records accessed. Confirmation on offshore accounts. Grayson personally authorized transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. At that same moment, Marcus was meeting with his mentor, Evelyn, again this time in her office overlooking San Francisco Bay. It's all connected, Marcus explained, showing her documents on a secure tablet. The same banking group that denied my first business loan owns a significant share in Regalis Airways. The same board members who privately mocked my affirmative action MIT scholarship sit on Regalis's advisory board. Evelyn studied the connections. You've been tracking this for years. I track everything, Marcus replied simply. Information is power. I learned that lesson early. Evelyn handed back the tablet. What happened to that bright-eyed boy who wanted to use AI to predict food shortages and save lives? He grew up, Marcus said, his voice softer. He learned that to change the world, you need more than good intentions. You need leverage. And now you have it. Marcus nodded. Now I have it. Just be careful that in fighting monsters, you don't become one yourself. As Marcus left Evelyn's office, his phone rang with a call from Sarah. We have a situation, she said without preamble. Pierce is targeting our inside sources. Malik Carter and Daniel Brooks are both being pressured. Expected, Marcus replied calmly. Activate countermeasures. Make sure they're protected. Already in progress. At Regalis headquarters, Julian Pierce was briefing Richard Grayson on his progress. We've identified several potential leaks and are containing them, he reported. More importantly, we've compiled some interesting information on Marcus Reed himself. Richard leaned forward eagerly. Something we can use? Possibly. A sexual harassment allegation from an ex-employee that was settled quietly 3 years ago. Perfect. Richard smirked. Leak it to the press. I wouldn't advise that yet, Julian cautioned. We need to verify. No, Richard interrupted. I want it out there now. Let's see how Mr. Reed likes being on the defensive. Julian hesitated, but nodded. As you wish. Within hours, a thinly sourced story appeared on a fringe news site. Tech billionaire Marcus Reed, accused of sexual misconduct. The story barely had time to circulate before Sarah's team intercepted it. What happened next shocked even the most seasoned media watchers. The news site suddenly published a retraction and an apology, along with leaked emails showing that Julian Pierce had paid for the false story. Simultaneously, legitimate news outlets received documented evidence of Richard Grayson's offshore accounts, complete with transaction records and dates. CNN, breaking news, Regalis Airways CEO, under investigation for financial irregularities. MSNBC, whistleblowers reveal culture of discrimination at Regalis Airways. Wall Street Journal, SEC launches probe into Regalis Airways following leaked documents. Richard stared at the television in his office, in horror, as the stories broke one after another. His phone rang. It was the board chairman. What the hell is happening, Richard? The chairman demanded. It's Reed, Richard sputtered. He's orchestrating this somehow. Fix it, the chairman ordered. Or we will. Just as Richard hung up, his computer screen flickered, and a video call connected automatically. Marcus Reed's face appeared, calm and composed. Hello, Richard. Richard nearly jumped out of his chair. How did you get on my secure line? There's nothing secure about Regalis systems, Marcus replied evenly. Not anymore. What do you want? Money? An apology? Marcus almost smiled. I have more money than you'll ever have, Richard. And your apology would be meaningless. Then what? Justice. Accountability. Change. Marcus leaned closer to the camera. You're not just fighting me, Richard. You're fighting the future. As the call ended abruptly, Richard lunged for his phone to call Julian, but the screen showed only one message. We're not shutting down a flight. We're shutting down an empire. The elegant glass conference room at Reed Dynamics headquarters in San Francisco buzzed with quiet precision as Marcus's legal team assembled. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the Golden Gate Bridge stood partially shrouded in morning fog, a fitting metaphor for the veiled battle about to unfold. The formal letter of complaint has been delivered to Regalis Airways, said Rebecca Lawson, Marcus's chief legal counsel. Her tailored navy suit and no-nonsense demeanor reflected her reputation as one of the most feared litigators in corporate America. We've accused them of racial discrimination, hostile customer environment, and violation of federal transportation equality statutes. Marcus nodded, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. And their response? Their legal team is scrambling, Rebecca replied with the ghost of a smile. They've requested a 48-hour extension to formulate their official response. Granted, Marcus said. The letter is merely a distraction anyway. Rebecca exchanged glances with Sarah Adekunle, who stood by the window, her posture military straight. Phase 2 is progressing exactly as planned, Sarah reported. I've assembled a team of 20 specialist cybersecurity experts, former journalists, financial investigators. We're preparing for coordinated exposure on multiple fronts. Marcus rose from his chair and approached the smart wall, where dozens of data points connected in a complex web, Regalis Airways' corporate structure, leadership lines, financial holdings, and hidden connections. Their empire is built on sand, he observed, hollowed out by greed, held together by intimidation and political connections. The SEC is already quietly investigating, based on the initial information we've provided, Rebecca added. But they're moving cautiously due to Grayson's political connections. Politics. Marcus's voice carried a rare note of disdain. The last refuge of the corrupt. He turned to face his team. This isn't just about one incident or one airline. This is about systems designed to exclude, to protect the powerful, to maintain hierarchies. Linda Hayes isn't the disease. She's a symptom. Speaking of Linda, Sarah interjected. Our investigation has uncovered 12 previous formal complaints against her for discriminatory treatment of passengers, all buried by Regalis HR. Marcus wasn't surprised. And the young gate agent, Sophie. She's being pressured to remain silent, Sarah confirmed. Julian Pierce has been circulating implied threats about her future employability if she speaks out. A muscle tightened in Marcus's jaw, a rare display of visible emotion. Ensure she's protected. Same for Malik and Daniel Brooks. As his team dispersed to execute their assignments, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn Banks. Grayson is mobilizing his political allies. Senator Gardner called me, asking questions about you. Be careful. Across the country at Regalis Airways headquarters, the board of directors had convened an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense, with raised voices echoing down the corridor outside the boardroom. This is spiraling out of control, argued William Freeman, one of the senior board members. We need to settle with Reed immediately, issue a public apology, and move on. Absolutely not, Richard Grayson countered, his face flushed with anger. We show weakness now, and we'll have every discrimination lawyer in America at our throats. This is a shakedown, pure and simple. Margaret Lane studied the board members' faces, noting who seemed troubled by the situation versus those blindly loyal to Richard. She'd spent years watching Richard prioritize profits over people, but he'd always been careful to maintain plausible deniability. Now, with the company under scrutiny, fault lines were emerging. The stock has dropped 18% in 3 days, noted the CFO, Martin Reynolds. Institutional investors are getting nervous. We need to contain this. And we will, Richard insisted. Julian Pierce has managed worse situations than this. Reed might have money and tech, but we have connections in Washington that he can't touch. Margaret finally spoke up. And if the allegations about financial irregularities prove true, what then, Richard? A heavy silence fell over the room as Richard fixed her with an icy stare. Those allegations are fabricated, as you well know, Margaret. I'm surprised you even suggest otherwise. Margaret held his gaze. I'm merely considering all scenarios, as any responsible executive should. The tension was broken by Richard's assistant, entering with an urgent note. As he read it, the color drained from his face. What is it? Asked William. Reed Dynamics just released a cryptic statement on social media, Richard said, his voice tight. Sometimes giants must fall, and it's already got over 50,000 shares. Meanwhile, Malik Carter sat in his small apartment, staring at his laptop screen. After his confrontation with Julian Pierce, he'd called in sick, claiming food poisoning. He knew his job was effectively over. The question was what to do next. His phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Malik Carter," a woman's voice responded. "This is Sarah Adekunle from Reed Dynamics. We need to talk." Malik's heart raced. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important right now. What matters is your safety. Julian Pierce has placed you under surveillance. There's a black sedan parked across from your building." Malik moved to the window and carefully peered through the blinds. Sure enough, a dark car with tinted windows was stationed with a clear view of his entrance. "What do they want from me?" "I'm just an intern. You're a witness, Malik. And in Julian Pierce's world, witnesses are either controlled or neutralized." A chill ran down Malik's spine. "Are you saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying you have a choice to make," Sarah replied. "Stay silent and hope Pierce loses interest, or stand up and help us expose the truth. Either way will ensure your protection." Across town, Daniel Brooks was clearing out his desk. After refusing to cooperate with Julian Pierce, he'd been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, a corporate euphemism for "you're finished." As he placed his service awards in a cardboard box, his secure personal phone, not his company device, vibrated with a text. "Your car is waiting in the east parking lot. Black Tesla. Driver is trustworthy." Daniel hesitated only briefly before grabbing his box and heading for the exit. 20 minutes later, he was being ushered into a private meeting room at an unmarked office building. Marcus Reed rose to greet him, extending his hand. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming." Daniel shook his hand firmly. "Not like I had much choice. My career is likely over." "Or just beginning," Marcus countered, gesturing for him to sit. "It depends on your perspective. What exactly do you want from me?" "The truth, Mr. Brooks." Nothing more." Daniel studied the man across from him, poised, measured, radiating quiet power. "I've seen the rot at Regalis for years," he admitted. "Not just with passengers' employee discrimination, security protocols that target specific groups, harassment complaints that disappear." Marcus nodded. "We've uncovered much the same, but first-hand testimony from someone of your position would be powerful." "You're asking me to be a whistleblower. I'm asking you to be the man I suspect you already are," Marcus replied. "One who believes in doing what's right, even when it's difficult." Back at his temporary command center, Julian Pierce was reviewing files on potential pressure points against Marcus Reed. "Sir," one of his assistants interrupted, "we found something interesting in Reed's past." Julian looked up. "What is it?" "When he was starting out, his first company was effectively stolen from him by venture capitalists at Winston Financial Group, and the principal partner there, Bradley Winston, sits on Regalis's advisory board. He's also the one who connected Richard with several major political donors." Julian's eyes narrowed. "So this isn't just about the airport incident. It's personal for Reed." "Appears so, sir. Find everything you can on that first company and what exactly happened. We need leverage." As Julian's team dug deeper, Sarah Adekunle's investigation was progressing on a far more damning front. In a secured digital vault, she compiled evidence of Regalis's darkest secrets: flight maintenance records falsified to avoid costly repairs, harassment settlements with non-disclosure agreements, and most damning of all, documentation of private charter flights linked to human trafficking operations. "This goes beyond corporate misconduct," she told Marcus during their encrypted video conference. "There are connections to cartel money laundering through their subsidiary charter company." Marcus's expression remained composed, but his eyes hardened. "Do we have definitive proof?" "Enough to launch federal investigations, flight logs, banking transfers, passenger manifests that don't match official records." "Proceed with extreme caution," Marcus instructed. "When we move, we need to be surgical. Innocent employees caught in the crossfire must be protected." That evening, as Linda Hayes arrived home, she was startled to find paparazzi waiting at the end of her driveway. Cameras flashed as she quickly pulled into her garage. Inside, her phone was flooded with notifications, social media mentions, voicemails, text messages from co-workers. One caught her eye, a message from a former colleague with a link to a viral video. The video showed compiled security footage of Linda's interactions with various passengers over the past year. The pattern of discriminatory treatment was unmistakable when viewed in sequence: her selective enforcement, her different tone with different passengers based solely on appearance, the unnecessary escalations. Who leaked this? She whispered to herself, panic rising. She immediately called Richard Grayson's office, but was directed to Julian Pierce instead. "This is a violation of my privacy," she demanded when Julian answered. "The company needs to defend me." "Miss Hayes," Julian replied coolly, "the company is dealing with a crisis that extends far beyond your personal situation. I suggest you lay low and refrain from making public statements." But I was following implied policy. Everyone knows we're supposed to be extra vigilant with certain passengers in premium cabins. That came from leadership. I advise you not to make such accusations, Miss Hayes. More, they could be construed as defamatory. As Linda realized she was being isolated as a scapegoat, Marcus sat alone in his hotel suite, reviewing footage from his own past, his childhood, his struggles, the early betrayals in his career. The memories weren't pleasant, but they had shaped him, forged him into who he was today. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Assets acquired. Ready for full spectrum takedown. Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. "Let the empire crumble," he whispered. The first signs that something was catastrophically wrong at Regalis Airways came at 4:13 a.m. Eastern Time, when their global booking system crashed completely. Emergency teams were called in, only to discover that backup systems were failing to activate. By 6:00 a.m., as the first wave of morning flights should have been departing, chaos engulfed every Regalis terminal across the country. Check-in kiosks displayed error messages. Gate agents couldn't access passenger manifests. Security lines stretched for hours as TSA was forced to implement manual checks without electronic verification. Richard Grayson was awakened by a barrage of phone calls from increasingly panicked executives. "What do you mean? Total system failure?" he demanded of his CTO. "That's impossible. We have redundancies, all compromised," the CTO explained, his voice strained. "It's like someone knew exactly where our vulnerabilities were and hit them simultaneously." By mid-morning, major news networks were broadcasting live from airports nationwide, showing stranded passengers and overwhelmed staff. The Regalis stock price went into free fall as trading algorithms responded to the unfolding disaster. But the system failure was just the beginning. At precisely 9:00 a.m., a coordinated release of information began across multiple platforms. An investigative journalist from the Washington Post published a detailed expose on decades of corruption inside Regalis Airways, complete with internal documents and testimony from anonymous sources. Simultaneously, a whistleblower report appeared on the SEC's public disclosure portal, outlining specific instances of financial fraud, accompanied by transaction records and board meeting minutes where safety concerns were deliberately suppressed. CNN, breaking news, cut into regular programming. This just in, multiple sources are reporting that Regalis Airways CEO, Richard Grayson, maintained a secret set of books for investors while providing falsified safety records to federal regulators. The FBI has confirmed they are reviewing the allegations. In his office, surrounded by crisis managers and attorneys, Richard watched the coverage in stunned silence. "This isn't just a hack," said Martin Reynolds, the CFO. "This is coordinated warfare." "Where's Julian Pierce?" Richard demanded. "He's supposed to be handling this. He's trying to contain the media fallout," Martin explained. "But it's like fighting a tsunami with a bucket." Richard's phone rang. It was Senator Gardner. "Turn on Fox News." The senator snapped without preamble. Richard fumbled for the remote as an aide brought up the channel. There, being interviewed live, was Senator James Wheeler from the Transportation Committee, standing next to Sarah Adekunle. "These allegations are deeply troubling," the senator was saying gravely. "If verified, they represent one of the most significant breaches of public trust in aviation history. My committee will be launching a full investigation. That backstabbing son of a..." Richard began, but Martin cut him off. "Richard, the board chairman is calling an emergency session. They want you there in 30 minutes. As Richard fought for his corporate life, Daniel Brooks was giving a live interview to a different network. His military bearing and straightforward demeanor lent credibility to his account. "I witnessed systemic discrimination that was not just tolerated but effectively encouraged," he explained calmly. "When I filed reports, they disappeared into administrative black holes. The incident with Mr. Reed was just the visible tip of a very large iceberg. Across town, Malik had also gone public. His youthful earnestness and clear moral outrage made him an instant social media hero. I watched a respected business leader being treated like a criminal for simply existing in a space where they assumed he didn't belong, Malik told the interviewer, his voice steady, despite his nervousness. And when I tried to speak up internally, I was threatened and intimidated. By noon, a hashtag was trending nationwide, #RegallisReckoning. In the executive wing at Regalis headquarters, Linda Hayes was being officially terminated, escorted from the building by security, while photographers captured the moment from across the street. "This is unfair," she protested as she was led out. I was following implied policy. Everyone knew certain passengers were to be scrutinized more closely in premium cabins. Before leaving, she cornered Sophie in the break room. "You did this," she hissed. "You leaked those videos." Sophie stood her ground. "I did what was right. What you did to Mr. Reed and countless others was wrong, Linda. It was always wrong. You've ruined my life," Linda spat. "No," Sophie replied calmly. "You did that yourself, every time you chose discrimination over dignity." As Linda was being removed, Margaret Lane received a call from Sarah Adekunle. "It's time, Miss Lane," Sarah said simply. "The board is looking for leadership. They need someone untainted by Grayson's corruption who can stabilize the company." "And what makes you think they'll choose me?" Margaret asked. "Because we've made sure they know you were the one executive who consistently objected to the worst of the ethical violations," Sarah replied. "Your internal memos questioning safety shortcuts and discriminatory practices have been highlighted for key board members." Margaret took a deep breath. "And if I step up, then Marcus would be interested in discussing Regalis's future with you." Meanwhile, the emergency board meeting had devolved into chaos, with Richard Grayson desperately trying to maintain control. "This is a coordinated attack," he insisted. "Reed is using his tech resources to wage corporate warfare. The question isn't who's attacking us, Richard," countered William Freeman. "It's whether the allegations are true. Did you authorize offshore accounts to hide funds from regulators and shareholders? That's absurd." He was interrupted by his assistant, rushing in with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen was an email from Richard's personal account to Bradley Winston, discussing how to bury maintenance issues on the 737 fleet and intimidate safety whistleblowers. The blood drained from Richard's face. That's been doctored. Digital forensics can verify its authenticity," William pointed out. "Richard, if even half of what's coming out is true, we're facing criminal charges, not just civil penalties." As the board moved to vote on Richard's immediate suspension across the country, Marcus was meeting with his own board members. "Regalis stock has lost 47% of its value in a single day," noted his CFO. "They're on the verge of collapse." "Good," said one of the directors. "They deserve it after what they did. No company deserves to fail if it employs thousands of innocent people," Marcus corrected. "Regalis Airways employs over 28,000 workers nationwide. Most had nothing to do with its corrupt leadership or discriminatory practices." "What are you suggesting?" asked the CFO. Marcus smiled slightly. "I believe Regalis may soon be available at a very attractive price." That evening, as federal agents began seizing documents from Regalis offices nationwide, Marcus held a private call with a select group of minority shareholders from Regalis, those who had been increasingly concerned about Grayson's leadership even before the current crisis. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, "I believe we have a mutual interest in salvaging what can be saved from Regalis Airways." "Mr. Reed," said one investor cautiously, "given recent events, some might consider your interest in Regalis to be vindictive." "On the contrary," Marcus replied smoothly, "I see opportunity where others see only disaster. Regalis has a strong route network, valuable airport slots, and thousands of skilled employees. What it lacks is ethical leadership and modern governance." "You're talking about an acquisition?" another investor asked. "I'm talking about transformation," Marcus corrected. "At the current stock price, Reed Dynamics could acquire controlling interest for approximately 30% of Regalis's value just 1 week ago." "That's predatory," objected one investor. "That's business," countered another. "And frankly, It might be the only option to prevent complete collapse. Marcus let them debate among themselves for a moment before continuing. My offer is simple.